being different, defining the fox, and there can only be one.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life. The Remarkable People Podcast.
Hello, my remarkable friend, and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. You are in for a special treat. How often do you get to hang out with someone who started $1 billion company, right? Today you do. And our guest is going to talk about being different. He's going to talk about finding the fox and studying them and getting to know who they are. He's going to talk to you about becoming the only one. Yeah, not just another one, not just someone, but the only one, and how you can differentiate yourself in business, personally, and as an organization. And that's how you have this $1 billion success. So today's guest is from Canada. He's going to take the steps of how his life progressed, explain them to you and I, and then he's going to give us the practical steps of how to get started on our own journey in this area of success. So get your pen and paper ready to take notes. This gentleman is an entrepreneur, an expert at growing organizations. He helps people recognize their worth and is used as a catalyst in their life. He's written 7 books, and he's continuing the momentum in his life. And we don't even mention this in the show, but he's been married 56 years, I believe, to the same woman while he had this amazing success, which you and I know in today's world is a huge achievement for anyone, let alone for a successful corporate executive. So at this time, it is my pleasure and honor to bring you today's episode, The Roy Osing Story. Hey, Roy, how are you today, brother?
Any better, it would be incorrigible, my friend.
That's fantastic. Remarkable even, right?
Yeah, remarkable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show today. I just told our listeners around the world just a little bit about you, and they're pumped to hear your story, Roy. At this time, what we're going to do, we're going to hand the show off to you. We're going to go through your life, past, present, and future. So you just start off, because everything that's happened to you in life, good, bad, ugly, really ugly, everything in between, that makes us the men and women we are today. So we want to go through and hear the highs and the lows, what you were able to achieve and overcome in life, but then we'll stop and we'll break it down the practical steps so our listeners can get started on that path too as a catalyst. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome, man. So where were you born? What was your upbringing like? Brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, orphanage?
Yeah.
What was your background?
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in a place in British Columbia, Canada called Kimberley. And Kimberley was very famous. It's the highest city in Canada, and it still is as far as I know. And it was famous because it was a mining town. And my dad was a mine engineer who worked in the mine, and I worked there during the summers, etc. And it was a wonderful place to be from, quite frankly. Amazing childhood. I'm an only child, as my wife would say. It's pretty obvious the way I conduct my life that I'm an only child, and I don't know any better, so that's just the way it is. I had a great life in a small town, made a lot of friends, did a lot of things, went hunting, went fishing, did all outdoor stuff, and then left, went to Vancouver, where I went to university, got a bachelor's degree in math and computer science in those days, which is, of course, nothing like it is today. And then I went into the business world. I got a job with a local telephone company in Canada, and just started to work my way around and up in this thing. And where I learned what my brand really was my journey in my career. And my brand is be different or be dead. And it's simply an expression of differentiation, because I learned that life and success in life is all about figuring out how to be different from everybody else in a way that people cared about. Now, I'm not talking about narcissism here, David. I'm talking about genuinely trying to figure out what you can be special at in a way other people care about. And quite frankly, I learned very, very early that, of course, in a business world, that was all about performance. Okay, so how can you be different in a way that vaulted performance of the business? And so I actually worked a long time around and was eventually asked to be the president of a data and internet startup in the business, where I eventually took it to $1 billion in annual sales, which is fundamentally the last book I wrote, which is The Audacious, Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion. The interesting thing is, all the stuff that we were able to do in this business to grow it was exactly around my brand, which is figuring out how to do things differently than everybody else in a way, in this case, customers cared about. And they returned the favor, quite frankly, by allowing us to be very successful. And so I guess if I could cap the whole thing, I think my journey has been really trying to figure out how to stand out and not fit in, trying to figure out how to create a new box, not just play outside the box, but create new boxes to play in, trying to figure out how to be visible in a world that's replete with herds of sameness and commonality and insipidness, quite frankly, trying to figure out how to cut through all of that clutter and do things that people valued. And of course, in a business sense, the returning the favor was we kept them as customers and they loved us and they were loyal and they referred, et cetera, et cetera. But I've also done the same stuff in my own life. I mean, I'm a grandfather, David. I'm a grandfather of 4 kids. My objective when the first day that the first one was born is I'm going to be the be different papa. I'm going to be the papa that they remember for things that you don't normally remember grandparents for. Okay, I'm edgy. I'm edgy in my language. I'm edgy in my ideas. And I'm edgy in what I teach them. And they remember that. And we have wonderful experiences together. And quite frankly, it's really exhibiting and implementing the same kind of like brand, the same philosophy of trying to make things interesting and trying to make an experience memorable by doing stuff that other people won't do. I mean, I'm a contrarian. Okay, if the herd's going west, I'm going east, just like automatically, right? And I'm a guy that always asks the question, how can I do this in a way that no one else does? And it's kind of like been my guide and my light, my whole life, and has served me well. And the interesting thing to me is, mate, there's very few people that even think this way. Everybody's onto Google copying what everybody else is doing. You know, it's just like crazy. And it really concerns me, particularly in my grandchildren's case, where they're all at school and they're learning stuff that everybody else is learning, and they're not encouraged to step out. They're encouraged to follow the rules. They're encouraged to not stand out, quite frankly, and draw attention to themselves, because there's something wrong with that, apparently. And so, you know, I view this with a great deal of concern, to be honest. And because I don't think there's enough attention being placed to the individual doing things differently in a way people care about. And that's kind of like the journey I'm on.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. People are pushing hard for conformity to a social model, and that social model changes. And that social model is typically deteriorating, not improving on humanity. So I think absolutely some of the kids who are the biggest nightmares in school, those are usually your greatest leaders, right?
Well, it's absolutely true. I mean, Steve Jobs wrote an article called "Here's to the Crazy Ones."
Oh, did he really? I haven't read that. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, you check it out. And, you know, it's just wonderful because he basically says what you just said, that, you know, the crazy weirdos, yeah, they're different, but we hope that they're going to inherit the world because they're going to look at things differently. They're not going to be shaped by the common narrative. I just wrote like this. I blog every week, right? My latest blog out is to actually suggest that inclusion is a silly objective. And I'll just stop there and you have to read the article. But it's all about why on earth would you want to be included in a herd? The whole objective, I think, in my experience, to reap rewards and happiness is to figure out how to get out of the herd, which is exclusion, not inclusion. But I mean, that's just the way I love fighting narratives. To your point, they're getting silly and they're not being particularly helpful, and they're giving people misinformation, the wrong advice, and unfortunately lead to, in some cases, quite problematic outcomes.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. The removal of foundational truths so a certain group can have power over the masses, it's not just insane and evil, but it blows my mind that people don't see it and just follow. And what you're saying is so true. Why would you want to be included in the masses when you can follow God and be the leader? And it's just mind-boggling to me. So
But you
I'm
know what?
glad.
It doesn't surprise me that people fall victim to this, because we've been taught, as I said before, we've been taught to conform and comply. Oh, cogs in a wheel. Haven't been taught to question the status quo, call it shameful when it needs to be called shameful, and create a new universe for ourselves and people around us. We haven't been taught to do that. I mean, I coach a lot of young professionals, and they're struggling because of that. I keep saying to them, create, don't copy is would be a first premise here. If you want self-fulfillment and success, you need to figure out how to be innovative and creative in ways that matter to other people, not just for yourself, right? It's not about having green hair, for heaven's sakes. It just isn't, right? And so trying to get their heads around that is really difficult, because there's this incredible inertia out there that basically speaks to people wanting to stay in the herd because it's comfortable. They've been taught to be the same as everybody else. They've been punished when they tried to step out, etc. So why would you want to? Right? You just want to stay in there and go with the flow. The problem is, I mean, if everybody's in the herd, society at large, and especially from a business point of view, is at high risk. Okay, because nothing new happens. Now, you're always going to get the superstars. Okay, you're going to get the guys at the right-hand side of the bell curve that are superstars, and they get it. Okay, but the challenge for us is to take the bulk of people in the middle of the distribution curve and move them towards a superstar at 5 points. If we can do that, just imagine what happens to our world. I mean, it becomes a different place all of a sudden. And that's the challenge I think we have. And I'm trying to play my little part in it, trying to propagate and promulgate, the whole be different sort of philosophy in an attempt to sort of say to people, hey, there's practical, simple ways you can get out of the herd. Okay, so let's have a conversation and talk about that. And maybe you can discover a couple of things that make sense to you, and you go ahead and do them. And if you do, hey, that's a good day for me. That's a good day for me.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And you've led companies for years. Is this the way you are naturally wired? Is this something you learned, or a little of both?
I honestly, it's an excellent question. I've been asked it before. And as a matter of fact, the first time I was asked, I just thought, oh my goodness, that's a great question. What is it? And my conclusion is that I have this in my DNA. I'm wired for it. I remember my mother and I used to be like this at times because we were so much alike. And what we normally had difficulty with was exactly this, right? She wanted to do something. I wanted to do something else, right? She was very different. I honestly think I've got this thing from her, bless her heart, and may she rest in peace. Very strong woman, very, very strong attitudes, very religious woman, strong ideals. I think she gave them to me without teaching me them. She never sat down and said, okay, Roy, I want you to be different. I mean, it wasn't never articulated, but just the way she raised me, the things that we did, and what I took away, looking back, I realized I got from her. So, I mean, I've refined it. Okay, I've tried to create a process around my DNA to teach people what they can do to kind of like go that way if they want. And that's to feed the animal, David. That's to feed the animal that says we need formulas, we need processes, we need systems to help us. because they don't have it in their DNA, but they still want to do it. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, how to teach people to hire for goosebumps, for example, which is a crazy idea. I have how to cut the crap, how to kill dumb rules, the things that worked for me in business that got us to $1 billion. How to be the only one that does what you do, as opposed to be better, best, and all those claptrap expressions. And so that's what I've tried to do: take my natural wiring and actually explore how to create a practical framework around it that people can learn from.
Now, we have a highly responsive audience from around the globe. We have people who are business owners, C-level executives. We have people who are blue collar, all ages, all countries. But everybody's here for the growth and to just become a better man, woman. And, when I say man, I mean mankind. But when you were talking about this concept of being different, what are just some steps, like you said, a framework, a catalyst? What's a step that they can test and be like, damn, that worked. I want to contact Roy, continue the conversation. I want to get his book. All these links will be in the show notes. But what can they start today? If we push it off to tomorrow, it's probably not going to happen. So what can they rewind, listen to you again, write it down, apply it, like our slogan says, listen, do, repeat for life. What's the catalyst to get going, Roy?
What's really worked for me, and I had to figure this out, is what I call the only statement. And it addresses the lack of differentiation in the world. And I had to do it from a business point of view. And it kind of has roots like this. Like, if you ask somebody what makes them special and what makes them unique, most of the time they rely on what I call claptrap. They use words like better, best, number one, market leader, etc. And even as an individual, they say, well, I got amazing conflict management skills. I'm a great friend. It's not all these superlatives and comparatives. The language comes up. The problem with that is it's a view of yourself. It's not a view of others of yourself. Okay. And in a business world, of course, what you have to get is a brand that other people say you have, not what you claim you have yourself, because that's nothing but corporate narcissism. And on an individual basis, it is too. I'm better than you, David, because, okay, that's simply my view of what makes me. So I had to cut through that and create what I call the only statement. And it's been kind of like the major plank, okay, of my work. And it goes like this: I am the only one who, or if it's a bit in a business sense, we are the only ones who. Okay, it uses the word only because it's binary. It either exists or it doesn't exist. It can be measured. Like, you can't measure better. You can't measure best, but you can measure only because it's binary. It literally is. Okay, and so to somebody who wants to take a step, I say that differentiation is your main challenge. And what you need to do is figure out what you're the only one at, okay? So the quest here is to be the only one that does what you do. Now, the interesting thing is, I mean, a few years ago in this work, I stumbled across the workings of the Grateful Dead. Now, some of your audience will be long in the tooth like I am, and they will know who the Grateful Dead is. Greatest touring rock band in history out of the 70s and 80s, okay? Not only were they great musicians, but the lead guitar player, a guy by the name of Jerry Garcia, was also an amazing businessman, okay? And if you want to read a real cool book, read The Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. I stumbled on them, okay?
I again, whether I like the music or listen to the music, whatever, I remember looking at the marketing they had when they talk on interviews, and they'd be like, everybody else won't allow cameras or bootlegging. They're like, we encourage it. They were so smart for marketing.
Oh, yes. And before social media was ever here, they did a superlative job communicating with their fans. They reserved the special deals for their fans, unlike today when companies go out and give you a free TV if you switch suppliers. They didn't do that. They were focused on growing a loyal base. But Garcia said something And I just loved it because it corroborated my only journey that I've been trying to describe. He said, you don't want merely to be the best of the best. You want to be the only ones who do what you do. This guy came out with that, and I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I'm on the right track. Because I had been doing only way before I stumbled on Garcia. And he just corroborated that. You don't want to be the best of the best. You want to be the only ones who do what you do. Because that gets back to what I said earlier. Being unique is being only in a way people care about, in a way that serves others, in the way that they want to be served. So I would say to your audience, start figuring out what you are the only at. Get rid of words to describe yourself like better and best. Okay, you want to be one of a kind. You want to be unmatchable. You want to be the only one who does what you do. Now, easy to say, David. It's challenging to get there, but I will say to you, in my experience, your only statement is always a draft. It's never done. And the reason for that is the world around us changes. Okay, you cannot be so bold to say that my only statement will last forever, because that, my friend, is a ridiculous thing to say in a world that's constantly changing. And not only that, it gives people a little comfort when they're creating their only statement to realize that, hey, this is a working draft. I'm going to use it. I'm going to live to it. I'm going to play with it. I'm going to tinker with it on the run. Now, here's Roy's only statement. Roy Osing is the only coach and advisor who offers the only statement as a practical and proven tool to create a competitive advantage for organizations and individuals. I'm the only one that talks about this stuff. I am the only one that brings the philosophy of binary competitive advantage, okay, and specialness to people. And so what I do is I just relentlessly hit on that. I said, okay, what makes me special? Well, okay, here's what I'm talking about. Here's why it's important. Here's the mediocre kind of world of differentiation that we're in. Just look at any website and count the number of times they say better and best. Okay, look at. I mean, really look at. I mean, here is a great example. Okay, this particular organization says that they work hard every day to make the brand that they have the world's most respected service brand. That's their statement of what makes them unique. They say they work hard. Okay, that is a view that they have of themselves, and it may be okay from the point of view of creating values for an organization, but it sure as heck doesn't define what makes them unique, because everybody can claim that they work hard. You can claim that, David, and I can claim that. So it's meaningless, right, in the marketplace. But you can't run and hide from the only statement. You create your only statement, you set yourself up to be held accountable. You've set yourself up to be raw naked in the wind when people observe what you do, because they compare that to your only statement. They say, hey, Roy, wait a minute. What you just said, what you just did doesn't line up with your only statements. They can catch you out right away. And that's good, because that leads to things getting better and improvement. The ultimate beneficiary of people that are unique are the people that care about them, is the point I want to make. Okay, the beneficiaries of being special aren't necessarily yourself, although you probably get enjoyment out of being special. It's the people around you. It's the people that you love, whether they're friends, family, partners, or customers. Doesn't matter. It's all the same. So that's where I would say you get going on your only statement, David, and I will help you. I will help you along the way. And the reason it's so powerful is very few people do it, but the ones that do, man, they got something to hang on to now, whether you're a person or in a business or you're in your career. Like just think about this when you go to an interview and somebody says to you, why do you want the job? Why do you think you're qualified for the job? And you trot out an only statement. Imagine they go, boom. Wow, I've never heard of this before. Could you explain that to me, Roy? Yeah. That's the question I've been waiting for. Explain it to me. And so when you do that, guess what? You will be remembered. You will be, the person talking to you will get you, will remember you because you're the only one talking about the only statement. And people go, wow, that's pretty cool. I've not talked to anybody on a podcast or anybody else that anywhere else that hasn't said, wow, that's a pretty cool idea. That's never heard that before. And I go, yeah, you haven't.
Because you're the only one.
I'm the only one, dude. The only one.
That's it. No, I think that's great. And I think it's very true. I mean, anytime you catch people, they say the best speakers are the ones that are unpredictable. And with this, people are so used to hearing the rote, canned, prepared answers that, yeah, you thought through it. But at the same time, it's like, this is how it is. So I could see the incredible power of that. I had flashbacks from my first real job interview. Yeah. And I did something exactly like that. The guy's like, why should I hire you? I said, because we're absolutely going to see each other again and be friends. The question is, am I working for the competitor making money or you? And he hired me. Great. And that was just it was the truth. I decided I wanted to be in the body armor industry. I decided that this was a great company, but if he wasn't going to hire me, I was going to make sure he regretted it every day of his professional life.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah. So, but going back, there's something's ringing in my brain. I agree with everything you're saying. And I think our listeners, even if it's foreign to them, I think they're like, yeah, there's something to this. This is real. There's two dynamics that I see that are going to stop people from applying it, though. Number one, it's new information, which in a perfect world, that's the best. That's the easiest to overcome. It's new information. They just need to learn how to process and apply it, whether it's reading your book, contacting you for coaching, spending the time developing this only statement. But then there's the real, we all carry baggage. Most of it's not true. Most of it's just like, quote unquote, demons in the head. And they're thinking, I'm not good at anything. I'm not special at anything. Of course. I am not the only one that does this. For those people, Roy, you're probably talking to the majority, sadly, of our audience, right? Me, you, myself included, the audience. What is your advice to them to get started, to overcome these lies and find out the only?
Yeah, so there's a little process. Like, by the way, I hear that all the time. I can't do it. And I hear it from individuals. I hear it from organizations. We can't do this, Roy, because we're not special. And I would say to them, you are. We just need to figure out what it is. And the process that I created is, first of all, when you're creating your only statement, the first question you have to ask is, who are you talking to? Are you talking to the world? Are you talking to a mass market? Who are you talking to? Because it makes a difference. Now, in a business sense, for example, you would define who your target was, your target market in traditional marketing nomenclature. Okay. And the target market is created and identified because that's where you want to get your growth. And you've decided that if you addressed, say, customer group A, then you would have a way of achieving the kind of revenue growth that you want. So once you've identified that, the next question is really, what do they care about? Like, you have to go through this. It's not what you give, it's what they want, is my point here, David. And the way to get at it is define who you're talking to, figure out what they care about, not what they need. Now, there's a big difference between needs and what you care about. Okay, everybody's competing in the need space. But what surprises people is when you now start to get to what they care about, what they crave, what they lust for. Okay, what they desire. Okay, because that's the sweet spot of success, especially from a marketing point of view, because nobody plays in that space.
Yeah, and I want to, if you don't mind, I want to add to that. You said it completely eloquently, but for our listeners, this is the first time you're hearing from Roy, but you've been with me for 4 years now. From a sales perspective and marketing, Roy couldn't be more accurate. People buy mostly for want, not for need. And this is where there's that fine line of morality where you can be one of those dirtbag companies that exploits the want, or you can be the moral company and gives them what they want, but you're still not taking advantage of them. You're helping them. I don't know if it's true, but I think it was Zig Ziglar said one time, sales means to serve, right? If you're helping people and you're finding that balance and you're delivering what they want, there's nothing wrong with that. You do not need to feel guilty or ashamed. If you were selling computers and they need $1,000 computer, but they want a $9,000 computer with a VR station, as long as you explain it to them, you're good. Enjoy the commission. But if you were manipulating a lady who's in her 80s and all she needs to do is write emails to her grandkids and you sell her a $9,000 VR station, you're a scumbag and need to reevaluate your life. So I want to be the bad guy and say that because Roy's spot on, but make sure you understand what he's saying and the boundaries of it, because that can be really manipulated. But it is 100% true. People buy what they want, not what they need. That's why they drive $80,000 cars and live in trailer homes. That's a sad reality today.
Well, but part of the problem is the world is taught us that if you're actually successful, right, in matching a high margin product with what the customer is saying, that there's something intrinsically wrong about that. Okay. And it carries the sort of connotation of being dishonest. Listen, I'm a fan of excess everything. Okay. Lay it on them. Do more than what they expect. Surprise the hell out of them. And if they discover themselves that they want a product or service that is way up there, and you've helped them discover that, what the heck? There's absolutely what you're doing is ending up satisfying a craving. And that's what your job is to do. So when you're looking at the only statement, you go to the what do they care about phase. Okay, not what they need, because everybody can play in that space. And so you've defined, to get back to your question, you've defined who you're talking to, you defined what they care about. The next thing to do is you just draft, okay, something up in an only statement format that matches what you're good at with what they care about. You take that statement and just start working with it. You just start working with it, okay? This is not a challenge of creating a precise formula, even though we've been taught that we should formularize everything, that there should be an algorithm for everything. Okay, there's not. Okay, because this is not, that kind of challenge. Okay, it's it's organic. It moves and shakes depending on what's going on around you. But declare it and start working with it. Everybody is special at something, given the process I just described. Okay, because if my target market is a group of Gen Z people in a block of a city, and I know that they care about something in a digital space, then my challenge is to figure out how I can play into that space in a way that nobody else does. So this is the creative process. So the only statement isn't necessarily a manifestation of who you are today. It's going to be a manifestation of who you need to be successful serving the people you just defined. Okay, so you need to do the hard work to figure it out. Don't expect that it's just going to be handed to you on a platter, because it never is. It never is. But you need to do the work.
And again, going back to the starting point, some people, they're just hung up on, I just don't have anything unique. I don't have any value. There's nothing different than me, than the competitor, other than the color of a running shoe. They don't get it. And I've said this to people before. If you're really that average, you need to get out of this business and find something you're good at. You know what I mean? Why do you want to be number 20 in a pack of 100? You should want to be number one or get out, right? But what do you say to the person who sincerely does want to be number one? They do want to be special. They want to be the one, the only, but how do they find that? And we got that first step, but if they're still struggling, is there a process that you use to evaluate and kind of reverse engineer what they're so obvious to me and you, but what they don't see?
No, there's no re-engineering process here. It's pretty hard, and it's pretty straightforward. Identify who you're talking to, figure out what they care about, draft your only statement, test your only statement, go talk to the people who you want to talk about and ask them, I think I'm special doing this. What do you think? Am I being truthful? or am I smoking rope? What am I doing? Just give me, okay, based on the testing process, you revise it and then you go and move forward. That's all you can do. Okay. Again, I have to say it's not about who you think you are. Pardon me. I'm fighting a cold here, mate. It's not about who you think you are. It's what you need to be unique at to be successful serving the people that you define you want to serve. Okay, so again, it's not what's special about Roy. I mean, read Roy's only statement. I'm the only one that offers the only statement. That is not an expression of my DNA or my genes. It's an expression of what I'm unique doing in a way that matters to people. So it's strategic, okay? It's a strategic thing, not something that's obvious. And so I go back and say, you have to do the work. You have to know who you're talking to. And let me give you another example. If your challenge is to move up in your career, the first thing you need to do is define the fox. Now, who's the fox? The fox is the person in the organization that's going to make the decision about your future. That's your target, okay? So now what you got to do is figure out, and let's say Roy is the target. You need to figure out what Roy cares about, because in an interview, you better know what he cares about. And you'll find out that he doesn't care about copying. He doesn't care about people that use claptrap. He cares about other things. He cares about performance. He cares about growth. He loves Cabernet Sauvignon wine out of Napa Valley. He loves going to his place in Whistler and skiing. He's afraid of snowboarders because they're dangerous, right? Those are the things that you need to find out about, right? And once you find out about it, now you figure out, okay, how am I going to be unique playing into that portfolio of what he cares about that I've just defined? How am I going to do that? How am I going to be unique in there? Okay. And it'll take a different form depending on, the ingenuity of who we're talking about here, the person who's facing the challenge of creating the only. But that's literally the process you need to go through.
And would you agree or disagree? When listening to you, I'm thinking sometimes the people who are the best at this take themselves for granted and think they have no value because it comes so natural to them. So for instance, you were saying how you're observing the customer, the fox, and you're listening to what he or she loves and likes and habits and hot buttons, and you're really studying them to know how you can serve them better. When there's some people that do that so gifted and so naturally, but they take it for granted. So not everybody has to work towards this. It's just there. Like, oh, wow, that guy loves Napa Valley wine. I'm going there for vacation this month. I'll pick up a bottle. Stuff like that. So easy, but they're trying to, it's almost like we were taught as kids. I know I was, if it's easy, you're doing it wrong. When there's some things we're just gifted at.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If it's not complex, it can't be right. Okay. That's the kind of thing. If you can't put a formula to it, it can't possibly give you the right outcome, etc. And there are people who are naturally gifted at that, but it's a learned process, I guess is my point. In a very simple way, define who you're talking to, right? Figure out what they care about, craft your only, go test it, and just go with it. Try it out. That's it. How can it can't be any more simple than that. But you're right. You have to study, right? There's that evaluative process. And I'm not talking about being intrusive, but there's ways of finding out about people. I call them their secrets. Their secrets are the things that they crave about, the things that they care about. There's ways of learning about it. If we could only just have a conversation, by the way, and this isn't a conversation on texting necessarily. Okay. I want to go face to face and figure out who David is, right? Get to understand him, get to learn about him, what makes him go. Okay. So that I can be in a better position to deliver something uniquely to him. That's the process, right? That's the process. It's as simple as that.
Excellent. So between your birth and today, we really stayed more on the professional side of your story. Is there anything that we missed, whether it's personal or professional, or something you want to talk about before we transition to where's Roy today and where are you heading?
No, I've had a I've had a very imbalanced life. Like, everybody talks about, let's get a balance. Well, my experience is I was successful doing what I'm doing, what I've done, because I was imbalanced. Okay. I was entirely driven, okay, to do what I did. Okay. I was driven to perform. I was driven to be different. And I had no other way that I knew of to move forward. And so that's just it. Not everybody can do that. I've learned that this journey that I've been on isn't for everyone. Okay, because it's relentless. It's painful. Hell, I just discovered that pain was a strategic concept a long time ago. And if you couldn't suffer through the pain, okay, of constant rejection, of pushing a rope uphill, then you don't want to do this, because it is such the antithesis of the momentum that's driving the world today. Okay, so it requires a lot of time, arduous labor, pain tolerance. It requires so much of that it's impossible to have a balance in your life. You're either in or you're out. That's it. And so that's kind of like what I've been doing, and applying it to, as I said before, to basically everything. And it's got me into a lot of trouble. Okay, trouble from the point of view of being the person that's out there, being the person that's asking the questions, being the person that's perceived as being against everything that is being talked about in a cocktail party. Whereas the reality was, yeah, I was challenging because I didn't understand it. And I thought a lot of it was BS. And so I wanted to challenge. And so, you got to be prepared to do that and accept the consequences, good or bad. And, I've got a thick skin and I believe in principle, and I'm pretty well committed to it regardless. And so that's been my thing. That's been my journey. So I think we've covered that.
Yeah. And then in your personal life, nobody gets anywhere without sacrifice and pain and trial and, tribulation. And some people are, they're pain adverse. They don't want any pain, so they don't do anything with their life. And we have this show where we're more a personal show, and then everything always blends together: personal, spiritual, emotional, physical, financial. It all, like you said, balance. It all works together hand in hand. Because of your mindset, we've heard some of the pros. You started $1 billion company. What were some of the personal challenges that came out of it? But then how did you learn to recover and overcome that?
Well, one of the biggest things was basically rejection. To actually, promulgate a philosophy that people didn't know about, they didn't understand about, they didn't want to change to, and yet you knew deep down it was the only way that this was going to work, required a lot of selling and a lot of rejection. And so I would say that was probably the biggest thing, having to figure out how to work around it and how to basically overcome the people whose ideas and ideologies were really driven to try and keep us all in the herd, to try and keep us all the same, and fighting through that. And as I said, the words like audaciousness is my word. It's in my latest book. I hit upon that word and I said, wow, that's me. That requires people to be bold, courageous, in your face, doing it. Now, I don't mean in your face in an impolite way, but just a constant driving forward to say, okay, this is a momentary defeat. And look at, you got, for everybody out there, okay, there is no such thing as a silver bullet. There is no such thing as getting it right the first time. There's just not, because the world is too complicated. People are too complicated. What it requires to move forward it's particularly when you look at the level of adversity out there, is take a baby step. I call them a nano inch of progress. Take a baby step, right? Celebrate the baby step. Take another one, and then take another one, and take another one, and just deal with the consequences as you go. You're not going to hit a home run. Okay, the home hitters are so few and far between that it's not a model that's useful really to common people like us. It just isn't. So it's hard work. Get the bit of progress. Be imperfect fast. Okay. That has really been one of the things that's worked well for me. I'm going to be imperfect, but I'm going to be imperfect real fast. I'm going to move quickly to the next delivery of imperfection, and I'm going to keep refining it as I go. I'm not going to look for the perfect solution in spite of the textbooks. Put the textbook down. Okay. There's a point after which you need to get on and do different things and forget about the textbook. It got you where you are now. Okay, but it's not necessarily going to guarantee where you want to go to. And so you need to move on from that and get this practical thing going. I think the other thing that's really important here, David, is the whole notion of serving. You mentioned it earlier in the sales thing. I'm actually a proponent of the fact that we need people that convince people to buy. We don't need people to sell anything. Okay, so that's serving, just called a different thing. So we could probably get away with not having a sales department, but rather super servers, okay, that created such a demand tug that all people wanted to do is consume what we have. That to me is the ultimate in quote sales unquote, and it's all based on the notion of serving. We need more servers. We need more people that love Homo sapiens as well. I mean, the basis of creating memorable experiences personally, okay, in a career or in business, okay, are people who actually have this innate desire to love people, okay, rather than the people that like to write code and you stick them in a customer service job. Well, we all know how that ends up, right? Okay, so we need human being lovers, and we need to recruit them in business. We need to keep that uppermost in our minds when we're dealing with other humans, is to try and figure out. And it's hard. This is hard for me because I'm a driver for results. And I've made mistakes by actually being way too much that way, as opposed to kind of like slowing it down and pacing it, right, with people, and recognize that they have needs, right, that I'm ahead of them. And I need to pull it back if I want to get them on board. And that's all about the serving model that is so important in business and in life.
Yes. And when people get this, it's almost like an instant growth. Would you agree? Like when they get that service model in sales, it just your results just exponentially increase, and it is overnight. So, ladies and gentlemen, what Roy's saying, try to continue to think about it and ponder it and meditate on it. You know, when you're reading his book, when you're talking to him, maybe for some coaching, it's just going to start come naturally. But it's like anything else. You play how you practice. You got to continuously keep working that mindset to get to the place where you know what your only is. And then you know how to apply it and help others. And how did you phrase it? You said you don't sell them, you help them know what to buy. Is that what you said?
Well, I mean, the great salespeople just create a relationship that makes customers want to buy from them. They don't have to sell anything. And that's the kind of world we need to get into. It's a kind of demand pull as opposed to a supply push. Today, sales is supply push. They push, push, push. So I call them product floggers in my work, okay? And it's not their fault. It's a leadership issue because they're paid to flog. And look, we both know what salespeople are like. I love my salespeople, but I got to tell you, if I ever had a wrong compensation plan, they would go wild, okay, because they're so compensation driven. So I had to change it. And I put relationships and creating relationships as perceived by customers as a fundamental anchor of their comp plan. I got to tell you, they did not like it because that was a huge shift. They go, oh, you mean my customer's going to rate me? And I go, yeah. And they went, oh my God, went to their caves, thought they were bad when they got their first report cards, because I introduced customer report cards, right, as a basis for their compensation. I didn't get rid of the product quota, okay, but I changed the percentage. So the first year it was 60% products, 40% relationship, customer report card. The next year it was 50-50. The next year it was 60-40. So I gradually shifted it, and it was amazing the transformation that happened to the salespeople that wanted to do this. And there was a lot of self-selection out. People didn't want to be in a relationship business. I was fine with that. have them exit in dignity. But the ones that wanted to stay and really got what we were trying to do, they just, well, it was like a metamorphosis, David. I mean, they just changed and overnight, and they were such valuable. They started creating long-term value for us as opposed to short-term serve the quota, right? It was just quite amazing. And it was all based on serving. The report card we had customers fill out on their sales rep had 6 questions. Okay. And it was all based on behavior, all based on behavior. And that was my way of trying to create a customer set that wanted to buy, which is all behavior based, as opposed to salespeople that wanted to flog. And it took a while.
I'm sorry.
No.
For our listeners who are business owners, they're like, what are those 6 questions? Do you remember any of them now that you could share? Give them 3 and then make them go to your website for the other 3?
Well, no. I mean, go ask your customers what they care about. Okay. And what they'll tell you is, well, I want to get hold of my sales rep. So access. Okay. When I call them and they're not there, I want them to return my call quickly, right? This is rocket science stuff, right? Really rocket science. The third thing is they would say, I want them to follow up. If they promise me something, I want them to follow up if they're not able to deliver. Okay. Another one was, if they make a mistake, I want it fixed fast, but I want them to atone for their sins. Okay. Which is, if you check out my blog, I just write a whole lot about service recovery and the importance that sales plays. So my point is that if you're talking to Roy as your customer in the design of this report card, by the way, and the report cards are different for every customer, David, because every customer has a different set of requirements, right? So if you say, Roy, what matters? I would say, I want you there. If you're not, I want you to get back to me. And those sorts of things, they're all behavior based. Okay. But you just need to ask. You don't want to make it 25 questions. You want it to be 6 questions that address the most critical requirements of Roy or your particular customer. And if you have, 100 in the top 100 that you're focusing on, you're probably going to have a considerable number of different report cards because customers are, as I said earlier, they're different. It's the mindset, okay, of figuring that out. You want to define behaviors that matter and measure salespeople from the customer's point of view on how well they fit those behavior patterns. Magic.
Yeah. The results are amazing. Once you start that little bit of effort, it always is so beautiful to see how fast you see growth and change.
For sure.
So excellent. So Roy, where are you today? Where are you heading? And how can we as the Remarkable community help you get there?
Well, I have a very audacious goal, and it's pretty simple. I'm just trying to change the conversation out there. Okay. A conversation that helps move people along the Be Different kind of journey and path, right? To try and understand that differentiation today really sucks out there, and there's easy ways to move it. And I don't say that from the point of view of satisfying personal needs. I mean, I honestly believe that if we are able to move the population and towards a drive to discover uniqueness as opposed to copying sameness, we're all going to benefit. The world will be a much more interesting place to be. Performance will be greater. People will be more successful. Friendships and partnerships will flourish with this. Okay, it really will. And so by writing my 7th book, which is all along the same lines of Be Different or Be Dead, by doing podcast conversations like this, which by the way, I love. This is my way of talking about my stuff. It's kind of like the way I'm trying to get the message out and raise awareness. I mean, if we sell books, fine. But at the end of the day, it's like I would just like to see the needle move, right? Away from this kind of inertia of sameness over to be different, over to uniqueness, right? Over to being special in a way that nobody else is, away from better to only. So I can see those changes, David. That will make me happy, and I will feel vindicated.
And what's No, that's fantastic. And what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you, to get your book, to check out your blog articles? Where do they go for that?
So I have a website, bedifferentorbedead.com. And I've tried to put as many resources on there as I can. I blog every week. And so by the way, I've been blogging since 2009. This website has been there for a long time. I've obviously changed it and enriched it, etc. So there's a lot of content on my work. And you can check it out on the blog. So it goes through the only statement. It talks about sales, service, strategy, life. There's a whole bunch of blog categories, and hopefully people will find that interesting. There's a page with all my 7 books, which you can look at and get more information on and purchase if you want. And you can always get a hold of me on email. My email address is roy.osing at gmail.com. And David, I'm happy to have a conversation with individuals about this stuff. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. I get people sending me their draft only statements. Roy, here's what I got. Here's what I got. What do you think? What do you think? And we have a conversation, and I help them a little bit, and I feel good, and hopefully they feel better off. And yeah, it's great. So please take advantage of me. This guy wants to be taken advantage of.
And to do that, they contact you through your email, through your website, contact us, Mage. Is there any promo code they need to use, or just, hey, I saw you on the Remarkable People podcast, and I want to be the only? Help me.
Bring it. That's it.
Awesome. Well, Roy, it's been a true honor and pleasure. And to our listeners, we love you. We only want to help Roy and myself. If there's anything I can do, or like Roy said, reach out to him. We want to see you grow. We want to hear your success stories. So, Roy, before we close up this episode, any final parting words of wisdom or anything you want to share that we missed?
No, I just want people to be the only one that does what they do. Just keep coveting that, keep searching for it. And even if you make a little bit of progress, you're having a better day than if you never tried it at all.
Amen. 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 So, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard Roy. You heard some great content for sales, marketing, life. And like our slogan says, don't just listen to this good information, but do it, repeat it each day, so you can have a great life in this world, but most importantly, in eternity to come. So I am David Pasqualone. This was our good friend, Roy Osing. Roy, thanks again, my brother.
Very welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. You know all the things to do. We want to be huge. We want to be successful as a podcast. We're in the top 2. Next goal is to get in the top 1% of the world. We're not doing it to be popular. We're doing it so we can help more people. Every dollar that's spent on the book or invested in the book, every dollar that's sent in as a donation, every dollar that's given to us literally just pours back into the podcast and reaching more people, not for BMWs or Mercedes, right? So take it, apply it, share your success story, share the podcast so your friends and family can be successful, and let's just help the world be a better place. Our politicians aren't going to do it, right? Let's just have us and God get it done. And God doesn't need us, but we get the fun journey with him. So that's it. See you in the next episode. Ciao.
The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life. The Remarkable People Podcast.